is going to be just really valuable information. I've got my notepad ready. Heidi's going to start us off, and she is handling a lot of the policy stuff for the Southwest area, which we're really happy about and grateful for all of her knowledge and research. And then Logan's going to go over policy stuff. He's the policy rep for the Utah Prevention Network. And then we're going to turn it to Susanna and Rob, who co-chair the Utah Prevention Advisory Council. Yeah. So I'm pretty excited to hear what they have to say. And then, yeah, I'm just going to turn it over. So you guys go ahead and I'll mute.
I'll actually start, Teresa. Rob has another meeting that he's got to go to, and so we'll go through our stuff and then jump into some issues. So thanks for having us. We appreciate the Utah Prevention Coalition Association allowing us to partner with them and team up with them to talk about some policy issues, as we always do during this particular time of year. And so we wanted to just give a quick background. We know that a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about here is old hat to many of you. You're very familiar with this. So some of this might be a refresher for some of you, but then there's probably a lot of us that are new to this as well. So hopefully the information will be valuable. First of all, as Teresa mentioned, I'm here representing the Utah Prevention Network. So this is a committee that is made up of all of the prevention coordinators from each of the 13 health districts in our state. And every year we make a part of our action plan centered around policy to make sure that we're working with our policymakers, educating them about policies related to health. And so this year I'm the chair of the policy committee for our Utah Prevention Network. And so what we wanted to do is team up with the UPCA to talk about some policy issues and give you some information that you can use as you're meeting with policymakers from your area. And just to give you some quick background, we started probably about 8 or 9 years ago. I guess I could have looked it up, but it's been quite a while ago that we started encouraging people to meet together on Capitol Hill on a specific day to talk about prevention issues. So we started what we referred to as the Utah Prevention Capitol Hill Day, and we would designate a day where we would all meet there and we would meet with our policymakers and talk about specific issues. Over the years, that has changed and kind of morphed as we've dealt with different situations that came up and different obstacles and barriers that we had to get over. And one of the common points of feedback that we've gotten throughout the years is that it would be better if we started this earlier. Now, there are pros and cons to doing that. One of the major downsides is that as we start early like this, we still have a lot of limited information on what policy issues are going to come before our legislature this year. We're still early in gathering research and talking points on those issues. And so there may be some things that we don't have a lot of background on yet. And there's certainly going to be bills that have not even been announced yet that will come out as we get further into the legislative session. The major pro point for starting earlier, though, is that a lot of the times, by the time we went to the Capitol and met with our policymakers, many of the bills that were related to public health and prevention had already been voted on and decided on and had moved through the process. And so we were there to talk about things that were no longer relevant because a decision had already been made. So knowing that we're early and that there's some things that we don't know about yet, there's going to be a lot of things that come up, we decided that we would do this meeting the very first week of the session this week. We also are not doing an in-person meeting. So we still encourage everybody. We set the date for January 26th, which is next Thursday. And we still encourage everybody to spend that day focusing in on policy issues related to prevention. We would encourage you to reach out and talk to your policymakers however you want, whether that means going to the Capitol and meeting with them there, or setting up virtual meetings or making phone calls or whatever that looks like. But we also know that a lot of you started even earlier than that. Many of you had your meetings with policymakers before they left to go to the Capitol for the beginning of the session. We know that some of you that are on the call with us right now are actually there. You're up meeting with your policymakers in Salt Lake today, which is awesome. And so what we decided we would do is just provide you a little bit of information about some of the issues that we're currently aware of and answer any questions that we possibly can that might help you as you have conversations with policymakers about these issues. And we also wanted to just give you a little bit of information about how to do policy work in case you might be new to this. And so we've asked Rob, who is one of the co-chairs of the Utah Prevention Advisory Council, to take a little bit of time here and just give us some brief pointers on how we can do effective policy work. And then Susanna, who is the other co-chair of the Utah Prevention Advisory Council, is going to give us a little bit of background on what that committee is and what resources they can provide to us. And then we'll turn it over to Heidi and we'll start talking about some specific issues. So Heidi's going to talk to us about the mini bottle issue, which some of you might be aware of, and she's created some talking points and some research for us on that. And then with whatever time we have left, we'll jump into some other issues. So Rob, we'll turn it to you.
Yay, super excited. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about policy. Okay, so first things first, here we go. I just put in the chat. Okay, we're good. Okay, I just put in the chat a link to find your legislator. And so hit that link if you don't know who your legislators are. Should be two of them. There will be a House of Representatives representative and a state senator. Just type in your address and you should find them. It should populate for you and you should be able to find the districts, both the House and Senate districts that you're in. Okay, so here's the bonus. And I'm going to go through this slide that I'm showing you. Right now, if you do know, if you're typing in, or if you already know your who represents you and where you live, use one of the links after you've clicked on their picture, their bio, to either send an email or get a phone number or whatever. Send them a quick message right now, introducing yourself as a constituent and saying, if you have any questions on any bills on alcohol, marijuana, suicide, or anything else, please feel free to reach out to me at any time during this session. There's going to be a prize for anybody that gets a response back from a legislator. That prize is going to be a PopCon sweatshirt, most likely in size large, because I think we still have a few of those left. Anyway, just do that. I'm totally interested to see if any of the legislators or their interns would respond. If you say, hi, I'm a constituent, I live in your district. If you have any questions or anything that you need help with on alcohol policy, marijuana, e-cigarettes, feel free to reach out to me. Just see what happens. Okay. So over the years, many of you have probably seen me talk about policy, talk about building relationships and talking about this work. I'm going to touch on some of the same principles using this document as a little bit of a guide. There was a really cool piece that came out yesterday, I believe, in Fox 13. And if I get a chance, I will link that also in the chat. By Ben Winslow. Ben Winslow covers all things up at the Capitol for Fox 13. And he put a little piece together with interviews from several legislators, several lobbyists, and people interested in and familiar with the legislative process, talking about how there is this call, especially this year, and you may have seen it from the governor as well, on people getting involved in politics. The governor made a comment. It was kind of crazy. He was like, if normal people don't show up to the Capitol and provide information, then all we get is crazy people's opinions. And that, to have him kind of say that, and I paraphrased it, but to have him say that calls for the importance of just regular, normal, everyday Utahns being involved in the political process, because we all see the news, we all see people that are the loud minority, and very, very, very slim minority at that, but they are loud. And that is what the news covers. That's what makes it on, in the stories and things. And oftentimes those people may be super, super passionate about things, but also legislators need to hear from normal, everyday Utahns as well. So with that, I'll kind of start. Legislators are normal people. The Fox 13 piece talked about that as well. They're normal people, but they're in a position of power. And so it can be intimidating to speak with them, but don't be afraid and realize that they are normal people. Hopefully you've taken advantage of opportunities to create and build relationships with them and get to know them and who they are. Maybe you patronize their businesses, or you are associated with them in your neighborhood or in a church congregation or whatever it may be. But hopefully you'll have a chance or have had a chance to build a relationship with them, because again, they're normal people. They got into politics because they felt somewhat of a calling to serve and to lead. And that's amazing and that's awesome. I couldn't do it. Maybe some of you have desires that maybe someday you'll be in politics as well, and you'll heed that call. And they're just normal, everyday people. So those two things to realize: normal, everyday people, and then building those relationships are key. One of the reasons why I had you send a text to or an email message to them right now is just to be like, hey, I'm a normal person too. I live in your district. And if you need a resource on anything prevention related, substance abuse or suicide related, reach out to me. I can be a resource too. That also kind of opens up the door for later on in the session for if there are things that you'd like to provide education to them on. You can reference, hey, I sent you back at the early part of the session. I'm a resource and I'd like to provide some information on this specific topic. So let's move into specific topics. A lot of us kind of get a little bit nervous when we're talking about advocacy and lobbying. Sometimes rightfully so. Sometimes we are funded by public dollars. And if that's the case, we cannot lobby. If we are funded by private dollars, that opens us up a little bit more to be able to actually lobby. So here's the difference. Lobbying is asking a policymaker to vote a specific way on a specific piece of policy. And that's lobbying. How we can advocate is by providing information on specific topics, but not referencing a specific piece of legislation, along with asking them for a specific way to vote, right? So we can say, hey, I just wanted to educate you on House Bill, and I'm going to totally make up a number now because at some point there may be a House Bill 589. Hopefully there's not 589 House bills this year. But I'd like to provide some information to you on House Bill 589. I am a prevention professional, or I am a member of a coalition in your district. And these are some of the key points that we know through prevention science and research about this particular topic. And I'd like to pass those things along to you. That is advocacy and providing information. That's not lobbying. Where we cross that little border in between advocating and lobbying, providing information and lobbying is as if we say, please vote for HB 589. So that's lobbying right there. We try to stay away from that. Again, some of you may be able to lobby, and that's cool too. If you come from dollars that are not public dollars. There we go. I'll say it that way. Okay, so I'm going to head over to some of the next topics that we've talked about many times before, but how do we contact and get in touch with policymakers? Again, many are on the Hill today. Many will be on the Hill throughout the next couple of weeks, couple of months. setting up meetings and speaking with your legislators in person. There's awesome opportunities to do that. Sometimes legislators get super busy and opportunities to meet throughout the legislative session become fewer and fewer as the session goes on. If you've already created appointments with them, that's fantastic. Now may be the time to get appointments with them if you'd like to speak with them generally. Another way to do it, to create opportunities to meet with them, is to go to the Capitol and put together a request for them during floor time, and that's when all of the legislators are together, either in the House or in the Senate, debating bills. You can call them out by sending in a note through the Sergeant of Arms teams that are located in the Capitol. That can also be pretty intimidating. The best way to communicate that with them, and probably even now updated from what I'm showing here on the screen, is through a text message. That text message may actually just go to an intern, or it may go to them directly. If you have spent time throughout the year building a relationship with them, they may have given you their own personal cell phone number, and have said, contact me anytime. And if that's the case, then man, you're sitting pretty, and that's awesome. And you can send in a message at any point. During the session, that really probably is the best way to communicate. Phone calls, leaving voicemails, if they're quick, can also be, can also be a pretty good way to communicate with them. Emails, if you're going to email them, in the subject line, say, I'm a constituent. Sorry, just a second. I got water. Put in the subject line, I live in your district, and this is about whatever topic you want to discuss with them. If it's a specific bill, say, I'm a member of your district. I'd like to talk to you about HB 589. Is that what I said earlier? 589. And then in the body of the email, be brief and succinct, provide quick information, and then leave your contact information. If you want more information, please get back to me on this, and I'd be happy to speak with you more. They'll get a lot of emails. Even in the article or in the piece by Ben Winslow yesterday, he said several legislators indicated to him they hate the bulk email. They usually don't read them. They may read the first one and then never read the rest of them. So try to avoid try to avoid those form letters and make them more personal, again, by saying, I am a member of your district. Okay, there we go. That's kind of the quick things that I wanted to touch on. And if anybody has any questions, throw them in the chat and I will try to answer them before I have to jump off to another meeting. But I think this is Susanna next. Maybe?
Sure. I'll go
Okay.
next. I can't remember. I'm fine. I'm just looking at the chat real quick. Oh, thank you. So I'm going to talk about one of the things that Rob and I are co-chairs of is the Utah Prevention Advisory Committee. So UPAC, not to be confused with UPCA, UPAC, not UPCA. I know we love our acronyms, right? But UPAC is the prevention group that really is in charge of looking at all the policy related to substance use and mental health prevention. And we focus primarily on substance use because that's where we were designated to begin with. As we evolve, we have talked about growing and including more mental health because there are similar outcomes and similar strategies to address both. So what is UPAC? It's a subset. It's a sub-work group of the, oh gosh, I even pulled it up so I can make sure I have it. Because I wanted to make sure I said it. Oh, where'd it go? I even clicked on it just to make sure I had the right explanation of it, because I hate, oh no, I lost it. I don't know where it went. Crap. I hit the wrong button. When I was looking at the district map, I must have hit it. It's your fault, Rob. I know, but I did email both my people. Anyway, so it's the Utah Substance Use and Mental Health Advisory Council. So it should be an acronym of USUMHAC. However, that's not what it is. It's still USAVE Plus. Why? They didn't want to change it. But what USAVE Plus is that's essentially a committee or council, sorry, it's a council that these are cabinet level people. So these are the people running the Department of Health and Human Services, or some directors from different agencies underneath that. So whether it's Division of Child and Family Services or the Office of Substance Use and Mental Health, all of those people are sitting on there. They have judges, they have community members, they have doctors, they have people from Intermountain. All of these people sit on there to discuss policy and things that impact our state. They focus on mental health and substance use. And the thing is, every Monday during the legislative session for yesterday, so because yesterday, or not yesterday, Monday, which was a holiday, we will be meeting to review all of the bills. And every week, USAVE goes through the bills, the USAVE exec group, and kind of goes through like, is this something we support, hold, oppose, based on information we have. Why is that useful to you all? Because then we understand what's going on and we can talk about things that impact all of us. There is a prevention building block that is from the State Board of Education. We had questions. So Rob and I made an appointment to meet with people from the State Board of Education, not the elected board, the actual board, like the employees. And we got the information out, and now we understand and we can make a decision based off that additional information. And then additionally, UPAC is going to be meeting every Thursday during the legislative session so that we narrow it even further down to just prevention bills, not everything. We don't necessarily focus on all of the things that are out there that might be licensure for a licensed substance abuse counselor or substance use counselor. There may be things that don't apply. So we review these every week, and then we send it out to UPCA and to our local areas and coalitions. And that's where we as a group can advocate and educate for bills or policy that best serve the people of Utah and creating a healthier community. And that's what UPAC and then subsequently USAVE do. Do you have questions on UPAC or USAVE, knowing that they're lovely acronyms and I don't want to confuse you all? Their chat, I'm looking at the chat. Okay. Okay, thank you. Then it goes to Heidi, I believe. And by the way, that link is not really, like, I tried to click on it and I swear I ran into issues, but oh, thank you, Heidi.
No problemo. I'm going to turn my camera off because my internet is really struggling. So for those of you guys that aren't familiar, mini bottles are going to be a bill that we're going to see come up in the legislative session this year. And just a little bit of history on this. Last summer, someone from the tourism industry, from what I understand, approached the DABS and asked them to consider changing a rule to allow mini bottles to be sold here in the state of Utah again. They said what they were seeing is that tourists were coming into the state and they wanted to drink, and they were really frustrated by having to purchase the larger bottles of alcohol and not being able to finish it before their trip was over. So they felt like their money was wasted, or they felt like they had to overconsume to drink the alcohol so their money wouldn't go down the drain. So the DABS met together, they considered it, and by the time prevention advocates found out about it, it was too late. Like the train had already left the station. So there was enough positive pushback from prevention that the DABS allowed for a 30-day public comment period. And they received about 480 emails and letters from throughout the state. I will say that most of the emails that they received were in support of mini bottles, but only because, like Rob mentioned earlier, they were form letters. So people could log on a website, they could type in their name, and it would automatically generate an email to be sent to the DABS. They received about 180 emails, I think, from prevention advocates and coalition members in opposition. And all of those emails were individualized, they were well written, and they explained to the commission why we thought that mini bottles would be negative for the youth in the state of Utah. And so they took that into consideration and ultimately, from what I understand, pushed this issue back to the legislature to decide on. So now it will become a bill and we'll be able to reach out to our policymakers about this issue, if I'm understanding it all correctly. It hasn't been numbered yet. I haven't seen anything, but as soon as it does, we'll send out information so that you as preventionists and your coalitions can act on this issue and educate your policymakers on this. So a little bit of history. The mini bottles were legal here in Utah for about 20 years, from 1969 to 1990, when alcohol laws changed and it kind of made them obsolete. They're legal as far as hotels for mini bars and airlines. But other than that, we don't sell mini bottles here in Utah. We're not the only state that doesn't sell mini bottles, though. They're also not allowed in Arkansas and Massachusetts, and Texas only allows them for on-premises consumption. Maine and Connecticut also tried for a ban, but ultimately ended up imposing a steep markup and deposit fee on these products because they were getting such pushback, but they were so negative for the environment in those areas. And then as of July 1 of 2022, New Mexico joined in the ban. And for those of you guys that don't know, they're doing a lot of exciting alcohol policy stuff in New Mexico. So they are the state to watch, including writing for a bill to increase the tax on alcohol. So definitely keep an eye on New Mexico. So alcohol mini bottles they contain about 50 milliliters of alcohol. That's about 1.7 ounces. And to put that into perspective, 1.5 ounces is what the US Department of Health considers a shot or one standard drink. They're essentially a pocket-sized replica of their larger counterparts. And as you can see, they come in a lot of appealing flavors and cool bottles, and they can be quite collectible. There's clubs throughout the country that are dedicated to just collecting these mini bottles. And according to the alcohol industry, these mini bottles are a great way for consumers to try new flavors and new brands of spirits without having to invest a lot of money into full-size bottles. But we know with that significantly lower price, it could make these mini bottles or these nips more available to youth, young adults, and populations that are already struggling with alcohol misuse or abuse. So just to show you, this is a store, I think they have storefronts in Florida, but it's an online store as well. And you can see just how inexpensive these mini bottles are. I mean, they're cheaper than bottled water. And we know in prevention that price has a huge impact on consumption. So it's something that we really need to be concerned about. We also need to be concerned that mini bottles are so easy to conceal and transport. And nationally, the norm is that they're a discreet way to drink in public, especially due to their small size and disposable nature. And because of their size, these products are often disposed of without much thought. And I have found issues or articles from throughout the country of folks that are working to ban mini bottles because of the effect that it's taking on their community's environment and the public health. I think it's also interesting to note that these products are not recyclable. They're too small for our current recycling equipment. So they would just become another single-use plastic that would end up in our landfills, in our parks, and on our roadsides. And from a prevention standpoint, this littering issue concerns us greatly because it tells us that folks are already using these products in public, even though communities have laws and ordinances to try and prohibit that. And it tells us that our youth are now being exposed to this use. And we in prevention know that the more youth are exposed to the use of alcohol in person or just with the trash left behind, the more youth begin to believe that this behavior, these nips are normal in their community, and the perception of risk associated with youth alcohol use decreases, leading to an increase in use rates. And that's really scary. So these are just some examples of what I've seen from throughout the country of areas that are already dealing with the nip issue and working to try and get it banned. So I think it's important that our policymakers see what an impact that these nips are already having across the country when they talk about adding them to our state. Our next concern with allowing the sale of mini bottles in Utah stems from changing the availability of these products. You guys know many studies have shown that increasing the availability of products like this can cause an increase in use rates. So it's logical to conclude that with the availability of these mini bottles increasing in homes and in our communities, youth are going to have more access to alcohol, and youth alcohol use rates are going to increase. And for us in prevention, that's very discouraging, as we've been working on this for years. We're concerned that small and easy concealable products like these are going to start popping up in places where alcohol is usually not allowed, or if it is, it's monitored to prevent over-serving, disorderly conduct, drunk driving, and a myriad of other negative outcomes related to alcohol use. Places like movie theaters, local sporting events, community festivals, and in our state and national parks. And this could lead to an increase in disorderly conduct, DUIs, accidents, and other alcohol-related infractions, and cause more work for our already overburdened state and local first responders. And I just wanted to show that public intoxication is already an issue here in Utah. A lot of people don't think that. I mean, the national norm is that Utah doesn't drink, but we do. In 2019, almost 3,000 people were arrested for public intoxication, and 44 of those were under 18. And I just wanted to show alcohol litter is already an issue. These are a few pictures from my community. One is in front of a church, and the other was in front of a grocery store, I believe. So, I mean, we're already seeing people littering with the alcohol products that we have available now. And what do we want the nation to know us for, our trash, or do we want to be known for our scenic vistas and our red rocks? So I wanted to share this quote with you from the director of the Bureau of Alcoholic Beverages and Lottery Operations out of Maine. They're seeing a lot of issues with nip use, specifically the Fireball whiskeys. Today's drivers need not fear getting caught with an open container while nursing a bottle. They can purchase a number of nips and simply drink and discard the containers one at a time, so there's never an open one for more than a few seconds. I think it's important for us to consider the toll these products could take on our highway safety. I think it would be naive of us to assume that allowing mini bottles to be sold here in the state of Utah wouldn't affect our roadways. Now, am I saying that everyone that's going to purchase a mini bottle is going to consume it while driving? No, but I am saying that the risk of consumption of alcohol while driving will increase given the nature of these products, and we're already seeing it throughout the nation. So here are a few more examples of other areas and what they're seeing. And impaired driving is already an issue here in Utah. I won't bore you with all the data, but you can find it online, and it's really, really interesting. For example, in 2021, there were 10,619 DUI-related arrests here in Utah. That's an average of 29 DUI arrests that are happening every day. So it's already a big issue here. And this is the budget from the Utah Highway Safety Department. That's just one agency that's already working to try and prevent impaired driving here in Utah. How are mini bottles going to affect these other agencies and organizations that we work with on our coalitions or in our communities that are already trying to work to address this issue? And I wanted to end with a quote, an editorial quote from the Salt Lake Tribune from Ken Wynn, who was the former director of the Utah Department of Alcoholic Beverages, who said, by the 1980s, government leaders in many states began to grow weary of alcohol mini bottles. They were a favorite for underage drinkers and made for a stronger drink than what was recommended by federal health officials. He did go on later in that article to mention, looking back, I wish we had kept the mini bottle. People deserve a good drink for the money that they pay, which is true, they do. And if this is a tourism industry, then why are we not encouraging these visitors from outside of the state to frequent our bars and our restaurants? It seems like allowing mini bottles to be sold again in the state of Utah is just a way that they're ignoring the science behind alcohol availability. And I just think we need to proceed cautiously. So does anyone have any questions? Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Heidi. Heidi has also put together a fact sheet that has kind of a summary of a lot of the stuff that she's talked about here. And so we'll make sure that we include that so that you can use that. Our hope as we talk about these issues is that, I mean, I'm hoping that as you were sitting there listening to Heidi, you were thinking of things that you could take from that to talk with your policymakers about. Rob talked about making sure that we make this personal. And so hopefully as you listen to that, you thought, hey, there's a data point or a research point that I think is really important, and I want to share that with my policymaker when I'm talking to them. And so that's our goal here, is just to give you some information and some research and some talking points that you can use to bring this conversation up as you talk to policymakers. I'm like Heidi, I'm really worried about the impact that bringing these products into our state could have, particularly on our underage drinking, and as she mentioned, on drinking and driving, not to mention all of the environmental impacts of this. There are a number of other bills that we've been following that we are also concerned about. And so with the time that we have remaining, we wanted to give you some information about some other things that we're following, and answer questions that you might have. And maybe you have some information about bills that you want to bring up. Susanna, maybe we should start, since we're talking about alcohol, let's talk a little bit more about another one that we've been really concerned about, which is a bill related to beer delivery. And then after that, Susanna, we could talk about the block grant thing. Just to give you some quick background here, a couple of years ago, the legislature decided to form a group that would start meeting year round. So as soon as the session ends, they start meeting to develop alcohol policy for the next legislative session. And the idea behind this was, let's do away with 50 different policymakers introducing 50 different bills related to alcohol, oftentimes waiting until the very end of the session when there's no time to research them or discuss them. And they said, let's have this committee take anything related to alcohol. It will come through them, and they'll have a whole year to vet it and discuss it, and they'll put it all into one big bill that is referred to as an omnibus bill. And then that will be presented to the legislature. And the idea was that they would hopefully then have a little bit more confidence that different perspectives and professionals had been involved in that, and that it was a better bill because of that. I don't know that it's working exactly that way, because there's not a whole lot of insight coming from public health and prevention services on that group. Susanna and I were part of their last committee meeting, and we presented a number of prevention issues, and none of them were considered or listened to. But still, the idea is that, you know, there's a year's worth of time to talk about these things before they come before the legislature. This issue with beer delivery was one of those that came to this group, and this group said this is a bad idea, and they denied it. They decided not to allow it into the omnibus bill. And so the legislator decided to run a separate bill outside of the omnibus bill with this issue, and it is related to beer delivery. Susanna, do you want to talk about it, or do you want me to?
Talk about it for a second. So one of the things is they want to have off premises. So the idea or the intent was they want to have the Smiths be able to do it to your delivery to your home or to your car in the pickup. And that's the big thing. They want to have it delivered to your home from the store. So because after the lockdown, you know, delivery services became very popular. And that's where this comes from. The concern I've had is that in 2020, during a virtual NPN, so National Prevention Network conference, Kentucky and Wisconsin presented a whole presentation on how this wasn't working. They'd been in place for 3 years in their states, and they'd seen an increase in consumption, an increase in availability, and a decrease in actual checks. So they took it upon themselves to do kind of like a, not sting, but like, we're going to do the easy compliance checks and see how people were doing it. And they had a number of people that were trying to circumvent the system to get it delivered to a youth underage. And that's my concern. So I don't know how many of you have ever used a delivery, like grocery delivery. I get it occasionally. They leave it on my front porch. There's no check. Nobody's checking my ID. Nobody's checking anything. They're like, well, you could do it virtually. Yes and no. But if you're not seeing me and my ID or even my digital license, how are you checking to make sure I'm the one that's taking it in? especially if I'm having it a no contact delivery. Those are the concerns. And we did, both Logan and I know we expressed the concerns during that work group. And that's the concerns that were coming up. USAVE opposes this bill. The DUI committee opposes this bill. So there is some stance that they're working on. I know that Art Brown and Richard Nance were going to reach out to them. I don't know. Oh, I did ask that, by the way, Bryce. It's talking about the average age of the delivery person. So correct me if I'm wrong, Logan, but I believe they told me to hand it to you without, you can be 18 to deliver, to like hand it to an alcoholic beverage, as long as there is a supervisor that is 21 years of age. So I don't know what that means for the delivery. But I do know, like, for your pickup, if you go to the like Smith's pickup or Walmart pickup or whoever and just sit in the parking lot, they can be 18 to bring it to you as long as there's a 21-year-old there. So, and yes, if you note Logan's statement in there as well. Anything else, Logan?
No, I mean, this is frustrating to me on two fronts. One, all those things that you just mentioned, like this could really create new access for minors to get alcohol. We've got precedent from other states showing that it's very difficult to track and to ensure that they're following policy. We're already struggling with this in the state of Utah just to do our on-premise and off-premise compliance checks. And so the idea of adding a different way that we also need to be enforcing just seems crazy to me. But then the other frustration is the fact that all of these committees, including the Alcohol Advisory Committee, said no to this, and it's still being presented separately. So this one's a concern to me. I think this could have a really negative impact on our state. Suzanne, you want to talk about the block grant?
Yeah, so if y'all, any of you who popped into that link that I sent you, one of the first bill is actually the prevention block grant bill from the State Board of Education. And we had concerns because the way it was expressed and explained to us is that there are a number of, if any of you work with your school districts, there are a number of grant opportunities or funding streams that come to districts that they apply for to the State Board of Education. And they wanted to streamline that into one application to get different funding sources that then allows for that flexibility. What came up was that there would be extra dollars that were unspent from a restricted account designated for the underage drinking prevention strategy that has been selected by the state of Utah. There is a every year allocated $1.7 million, and we weren't using that. The concern for us, and which is why I was hold last week or 2 weeks ago, was that are there going to be any oversight for this? Well, I spoke with Tanya and Clarissa from the State Board of Education, and they assured me that there will be actually additional oversight for these specific things. They would roll it out with more oversight than it currently has. And it is not just for a discretionary of like, do whatever you want. There has to be a plan and an application with it. So that is something that I was like, okay, if there's going to be extra oversight and they have to show that it's connected to not just a positive behavior plan, but a prevention plan for the district, I feel much more comfortable with those extra dollars going out to that. I'm not like 100% on board, but that was much more comfortable with that than knowing even some districts that like don't want to do the positive behavior plan. So any questions on that one? Okay. And then you want to do the cannabis one?
No,
Okay, well,
I will.
thing to talk about too.
Yeah, so there, and again, let me just reiterate, we're early on. There's going to be a lot of other bills that come out that we don't even know about yet. And so throughout the legislative session, we'll be following them closely. When I say me or will, I mean the Utah Prevention Advisory Council. So this group that Susanna and Rob chair, they're going to be watching these closely along with their parent organization, which is USAVE. The Utah Prevention Network is watching things closely. The UPCA leadership is watching things. And so throughout the session, as we get information about these things, we'll be sharing it with you. So you'll start getting some emails. If you're on the UPCA email list, you'll get emails with more information. And as you're gathering information, please share that with us so that we can include it in all the things that we're providing. But a couple of other things that we have already been watching is a cannabis bill that Susanna just mentioned. It is on that list that she sent. I can't remember how far down it is or what the bill number is on it. But essentially this bill, I mean, it does a lot of things. It's a really big bill. One of the main things that it does that was an initial concern to us is it creates an advisory board similar to what I was just talking about with alcohol. It creates a board that is looking at the regulation of the medical cannabis industry in the state of Utah and providing insight and information back to the legislature on that, and making decisions about exactly what rules will look like with that, with anything related to medical cannabis, which personally I think is a great idea. I like the idea of having an advisory board like this that's made up of different people with different perspectives that can monitor how we regulate a dangerous product. My concern, though, is that there is very little insight or representation on that committee from public health, specifically from prevention. And so it's a concern. I have reached out to both of the sponsors for that bill and expressed that concern to them. And one of the things that they pointed out is that that bill has already gone through committee and was approved unanimously because people recognize that there's some benefit to having a board like that. I still think that the board would be far more effective if they had more insight from public health. And in fact, I would argue that right now they don't have any. They do have one treatment specialist that is there. They also have a researcher from the University of Utah who is researching cannabis and so shares with them a lot of the research. But they don't have anybody who's representing the prevention standpoint, which I think is a problem because we have seen a huge increase in the number of youth in particular using cannabis in the state of Utah over the last 10 years. And so I think it's important that when they're talking about regulation and administration of this product, they have somebody there who can represent that perspective of what we're seeing with our youth who are using this product. So one of the things that I'm going to be arguing with my policymakers is that bill is a good one in general, but I want to see more representation from public health on that board. When I talked to the sponsors, they gave some good answers to some of the questions that I had. They believe that they do have a good, fair representation, that there is balanced perspective on the board. I'm still not sure that I see that, but that's what they're telling me. That's the reason why they're moving forward with it the way that it's written. So, and I also would tell you, as you talk to people about this bill, just so you know, both of the sponsors for this are huge friends of prevention. They've been very supportive of prevention services. They've been very open to all the discussion that I've had with them, which is a really good thing. So, I don't want in any way for them to feel like we don't recognize their support of prevention, but I still think we should have better representation. Susanna, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, so there were people on the treatment side that also expressed concern. So it isn't just prevention, it was actually treatment as well. And so I want to make sure that when we talk to policymakers or other advocates, sometimes they think, I had people talk to me at the alcohol policy work group. They're like, you guys are so anti everything, or you're so Pollyanna. It's actually not like prevention. I'm obviously biased. It should be a big component, but it's not the only impact. And this is where our partners in law enforcement or in private communities or our civil servants that are, looking at what they have to allow in their community for businesses, like that's all things that impact. Like that bill will impact all of us. And that's more than just prevention. So treatment was not on board with it either. So.
And that's actually a great segue into one other thing that we wanted to talk about. We don't have a lot of time for this, and that's okay, because with this one, we're still early and we don't know exactly what legislation is going to look like. But I wanted to give you an introduction to this because it is going to be an issue before the legislative session is over. And that is the opioid settlement dollars and how those are spent. So quick background in case you don't know, Utah is part of winning a big settlement against big pharmaceutical companies for their contribution to the opioid epidemic and the number of people who have lost their life as a result of overdose on opioids. And so Utah is going to get a payout as a result of that settlement. Half of that will go to counties, and counties will decide how they want to use that money. Half of it will go to the state, and the state will decide how they want to use that money. And there's a lot of people, as there always are, clamoring for those funds. It is a 17-year settlement. So that means that every year for the next 17 years, we're actually almost through the first year. But for the next 17 years, there will be money coming into the state, going to both the county level and the state level to address the opioid epidemic. And so, of course, law enforcement, education, treatment services, and a number of other entities are asking for those funds and giving proposals on how they should be spent. A group of us formed a committee probably 6 months ago to try to make sure that prevention is at the table and that we're showing the need to make sure that if we really do want to stop this issue, if we want to prevent people from becoming addicted to the drug and overdosing on the drug, we need to prevent them from ever using it. We're losing the battle trying to treat the rising increase in the number of people who are suffering from addiction and dependence on this drug. And we need to start preventing people from using it. So we put together a proposal. The reason that we're early, that I say it's early and we don't know exactly what the situation is because the legislature has not yet decided how they're going to make a decision about how that money gets spent. There's a number of different options. One is they could put together a committee that over the next year will make a decision about how the state side of the funds get spent. Another option is that they could do it during the legislative session as a bill. So they could just pass it as a law saying this is how we want this money to be spent. We have proposed, this group that got together, we had people from all over the state representing prevention and public health, and we put together a proposal suggesting a way that we think would be a wise use of the funds that would provide resources for both treatment and prevention services. And so and in fact, let me just pull a document up here and share it with you really quick. I'll minimize this a little so it's easier to see. Okay. This is a chart just showing our recommendation for how the money gets spent. We suggested that the majority of this should go into treatment and prevention services. And we suggested that in the beginning, they could use a formula very similar to what they used for the block grant funding right now that comes from the federal government, where 70% of it is recommended to go to treatment and 30% of it is recommended to go to prevention. So we said for the first year, let's do that. Let's put 70% of it into treatment, 30% of it into prevention. That way, we can address the fire that's currently raging and the really big need that there is for treatment services. But over the years, if we can increase prevention, theoretically, that should decrease the need for treatment services. So let's start putting more funding into primary prevention services. We recommended a 2.5% increase every year, which over the 17 years would actually bring us to a 70-30 split the opposite direction. So 30% of it going into treatment, 70% of it going into prevention. The settlement requires that however this money is used, there is some sort of tracking put into place to record outcomes. They actually want to see that we're making progress with the issue and that we're getting results. And they want to make sure that it's being used on evidence-based services. So the other thing that we recommended is that they could do with this similar to what they did with the e-cig tax money a couple of years ago, which is they could issue this money to local substance use authorities to get out to the ground level, meaning coalition work. With this influx of funds, we could actually increase professional prevention staff in the state and increase the number of coalitions we have by targeting communities that don't currently have prevention services and start getting coalitions there that can use an evidence-based model like the CTC model and track results. And over 17 years, we would be able to show whether or not these coalitions are having impacts on the communities that they're in. Now, this is a proposal. I'm giving you a really quick overview of what the proposal is. Again, we're still not sure at this point exactly what they're going to do, if they're going to choose a committee to make the decision later, or if it's going to end up being a bill. But we're suggesting this would be a really good way to, if they decide to go with a bill, with a law, they could build it around something like this, ensuring the real goal here, there's two goals. One is to make sure that we're putting funding into evidence-based primary prevention services. And two, that those funds make it to the local level, that they actually get out to you in the communities so that you can use them to do prevention services at the local level. So that's what we're trying to accomplish with this proposal. We will let you know once they decide how they're going to move forward with this. There is a meeting happening right now with some of the members of the Health and Human Services Committee, which is the committee that's going to make the decision about how this moves forward. And so this is being presented to them right now, and we'll see what they think about it and how they decide to move forward. We'll let you know. I guess at this point, we're just saying, be aware that this is a proposal that we think is a good idea that would really increase funding for treatment and prevention services, and over time put more of a focus on prevention. And so hopefully we can advocate for something like this, depending on how they decide to move forward. Any questions? Sorry, I know that we're at 1 o'clock.
I didn't have a question, but I did say, like, we're watching the omnibus bill for a lot of things that they're changing as well. We'll let you know as soon as that comes up.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I
Thanks,
can't
Anna.
enough to write your legislators or write as I have a note from like Art Brown, like the different policy leads, and CCing your own legislator as you're writing the policy lead, expressing your concerns about things. So.
Great information, everybody. Please share that out. If you or some of your staff or some of your the people that you're working with in your coalitions are not on this call, please share it out so that people are in the know on what's happening currently for this session, as well as how the structure works and how to do policy work in the future. So thank you to Susanna, Rob, Logan, and Heidi for all of the work that you're doing to help us further our work, and for sharing your knowledge and expertise with all of us. We appreciate that so much. Taylor just popped the roll up again. If you have not signed the roll, please do so. And then also in the chat, Pam Holiday, who has the Youth Coalition here in Washington County, is looking for an extra youth male to share a room. We have an odd number of students going to CADCA. So if you have a male youth that is not currently sharing a room with someone, we would like to invite him to join our group, at least for housing, and make up that difference, and she will pay for the room. So anyway, if you're interested, check that out. Pam's contact info is in the chat. And if you can't find that, you can contact me. So gosh, and thank you so much, you guys, for the documents that you shared as well. I think it'll be a good session, and we hope to see everyone up there. So thank you.